Hey guys, this is a follow-up or a resolution video for our Hofmann alignment machine. I may put some videos out later once we come up with some updated procedures for our shop to follow. But in my previous videos, if you guys have not watched those, I'll put links down in the description below. What I was concerned about is the accuracy of the AC200 quick clamps when used on a vehicle that is out of alignment. And in the first video I showed on a Toyota Highlander that had approximately 2 degrees of toe out. It took more than 4 rollback compensations to get an accurate or repeatable result. And I don't think I even took that one all the way down to 0. What I would do is I'd do a rollback, adjust the alignment to 0, do another rollback, the numbers would no longer be at 0. So I'd have to readjust, reroll, readjust, reroll. And I did that 4 times in that video before I put the AC200 wheel clamps on. And then I finished the alignment with that. And I believe that our AC200 clamps were accurate and more repeatable than the AC400 clamps. Now, years ago when we first got the machine and we were having some issues, or when we first realized we were having issues with the AC400 quick clamp, the field rep came down, looked at our machine, made sure that our machine was level, adjusted properly, made sure that everything was tight on the heads, put updated software in, and then I pulled the vehicle on the rack and I demonstrated the exact same thing that I showed in that first video. And he was kind of shocked to see that, so he called tech support, was on the phone with tech support, and they notified him that they were coming out with a new software update that was newer than the one that he had brought with him to our shop, and that update was going to have a warning message pop up if the vehicle was out of alignment more than a certain amount. So at that point, we still weren't real happy with the AC400 clamps, and we wanted to either trade the clamps in for the 200 clamps or get a set of 200 clamps. And the price was pretty high on the 200 clamps, considering we thought we were upgrading by getting the 400 clamps with our machine. So I was able to get a set of clamps sent to me from Hofmann to take care of the issue. When I received those clamps, they sat in a box for a week or so. I contacted our regional rep. He recommended that I do a target ID calibration using a solid axle vehicle, because he didn't have time to get down to us for a while, and so if we wanted to start using those, to just go ahead and do it this way. So that's what I performed, using a vehicle with a solid axle on the rear. I just did the calibration using the rear axle of that vehicle with both sets of heads. So we thought we were great with the 200 clamps. When I released that first and second video, the second video was just showing the update with the software and the message that comes up. A gentleman put a lengthy comment down in the comment section stating that he had several articles on IATN, which is a technician network for troubleshooting cars, equipment, discussions of all kinds of stuff. So I went on there and I found some of his posts and read through them, and he had some updated procedures and several screenshots of what his machine looked like, what his settings were. I contacted him through that forum, and we kind of traded information, talked back and forth, sent several long emails back and forth. He had forwarded my information and my video to one of the Snap-on engineers that he knew in Conway. And that engineer contacted me. I was also contacted by a couple of the Hofmann engineers and representatives. Some over the phone, some via email, and they recommended that I get the field rep down to do a actual calibration using a precise calibration bar so that we knew that our 200 clamps were accurate. So at least I was being contacted by some of the higher ups wanting to solve any issues that I was having with the machine. You know, there was a little bit of lack of communication at times, but all in all, I think that they finally came through. They got their rep down here, and I'll go over what they did to get us squared away. So before the Hofmann field rep came down, the Snap-on outside sales rep and his supervisor were in town for another service call at the dealership for one of their pieces of equipment. So they came over. I kind of talked to them about what was going on, and they said that by looking in our parking lot of what kind of vehicles we have and what type of tires are on those vehicles, that the 400 clamp probably shouldn't have been sold to us to begin with, and the 200 clamps would have been a better option. That's something that we were unaware of at the time. We just kind of went with what was available. The 400 clamp was the newest and greatest thing. The demonstration they did, they used the 400 clamp. We liked how easy it was to install on the vehicle. I think what we failed to realize was the downside to the 400 clamp, and that there was potential for inaccuracy with that clamp. Now, in most shops, especially a high volume alignment shop or a tire shop, where every vehicle that they're getting tires installed on, they're doing a free alignment check or trying to upsell alignments and front end stuff, it's probably a great tool because it's easy to install on the vehicle. It's going to show if you're out of alignment, and it's going to be easier to sell an alignment to the customer because of that. In a repair shop where you're constantly replacing components and then putting a vehicle on the rack after those components have been replaced, you may have an alignment that is drastically out. The 400 clamp may not work the best for that type of situation, or in our area, there are very few cars with low profile tires. If a vehicle had low profile tires, the amount of error would be a lot lower because you're not going to have the tire flex. And since that clamp is attached to the tire and not to the wheel, you have potential for tire flex if the vehicle is drastically out of alignment. And another thing I may have misspoken about is I wasn't trying to flame Hofmann for the machine or for the clamps. It was really a video of trying to show other technicians out there that if they're bringing in a vehicle and using the 400 clamps on that vehicle, and they have to make a big adjustment, you can't just put the vehicle back to factory spec on the machine and pull it out the door and expect it to be good. You have to adjust it, and you have to re-roll the vehicle to confirm that the measurements are correct. And it may take 2 different times of adjusting stuff to get that correct measurement. And that's what the video was for. It was to show other technicians that they may be sending vehicles out the door that are improperly aligned. It is possible that other shops have been trained to use the machine differently than we were trained. And it's been years ago. Maybe they did mention if the vehicle's drastically out, you got to re-roll the vehicle. But I don't think that's the case, because when I demonstrated this to my original field rep, he was kind of shocked that that the machine would do this. And then at that point found out that there was a new update to the software stating that the vehicle needed to be re-rolled if there was a major correction to be performed on the vehicle. So going back to the 200 clamp, the whole reason Hofmann came down to work on those clamps is because they're now concerned that the target ID that I performed on a solid axle vehicle may not have given me a accurate enough calibration to 100% rely on the 200 clamp accuracy. So if there was a deviation in my calibration procedure, if that vehicle had a little bit of wheel bearing play, if it was a semi-floating rear end and it had in and out slop, that absolutely could corrupt the calibration data. And I see that now. I wasn't too concerned about it then because the rep said, oh yeah, just do that. You know, I didn't even think about it. Just, oh, that's simple. That's something I can do. If I used one of my personal vehicles, it was probably a Toyota, which they typically do not have in and out play on the rear axle, so that wouldn't have been the case. And I've balanced most of my wheels and tires myself, and I know that my wheels aren't bent, but there could be a little bit of run out in the axle itself, the flange, and that could have caused a calibration error. The tool that the rep brought down, there's a calibration bar with a steel plate on each side for the clamp to attach to. Now there may be different plates for them to attach, whether they're using the 200 clamp versus the 400 clamp. But the bar is supposedly machined to a certain level of accuracy so that when they perform the calibration, the bar spins true and straight. The calibration does both sides at the same time. It's a solid bar, so both heads are linked together. Our field rep did have a little bit of an issue with a clamp that wasn't installed on the machine properly. He called tech support, they got that squared away, and he was able to perform the calibration on our 200 clamps. We've done several alignments with the machine since then, because I think that's been over a week ago, maybe 2 weeks now. We've been super busy, so I haven't had time to do a back-to-back comparison with the 200 clamp versus the 400 clamp. But it's Labor Day weekend. The shop's closed, no one's down here, so I'm going to come down here now where I have a little bit of time to get my vehicle on the rack, and I'm using my Toyota Highlander Hybrid. This is not the vehicle I used in the first video or the second video. This is another hybrid, or another Toyota Highlander. And this vehicle drives straight down the road, steering wheel straight. It feels a little darty in corners. I don't really like the way it handles. So I wanted to check the alignment anyways. But I think it's going to be close enough to zero that I can do a good back-to-back comparison. The guy that left a comment in the description, Steve, he said that I shouldn't have more than a 5% deviation between the 200 clamps and the 400 clamps. So this being a fuel-efficient, or supposedly fuel-efficient vehicle, it's probably going to have everything pretty close to zero, so they have the least amount of rolling resistance possible. So I thought that this would be a good test bed for comparing both sets of clamps without touching any of the suspension parts. I'm going to pull it in the shop, put it on the rack. The first thing I'll do is check it with the 400 clamp, see what I'm at, and then I will start the alignment completely over with the 200 clamp, and we'll see where we're at after that point. What I need to make sure is that the vehicles that come into my shop and leave my shop after getting alignment done are leaving with an accurate alignment. Is the customer going to be happy with the service we provided? Is the technician going to be happy and comfortable using the machine that I supply for him? And then the third thing is, can my technician use my equipment productively? If my technician can save 2 minutes by using the quick clamp over the wheel clamp, mounting up to the vehicle, that's 2 minutes saved. But if he has to re-roll that vehicle 3 or 4 times before he can get a vehicle that has repeatable numbers, then that's a lot more time lost. So then it's faster for me to use the 200 clamps. But all in all, I find the 200 clamp to be a much faster and much more repeatable clamp to use during this alignment. So Hofmann, they did a great job. They came down, made sure that the clamp that we're using is producing accurate results. I'm gonna unlock the doors, get my Highlander up on the rack, and we will go through and use both set of clamps and check the accuracy. While the alignment machine's turning on, I'm going to verify tire pressure. So everything should be good there. We won't get any weird results because of a low tire. And I'm going to use the AC200 clamps. Now my field rep did check these clamps for me, made sure none of the hardware was loose, made sure nothing was bent. So we should be good there. Now I'm going to select the AC200 clamps on the screen. It sees all 4 targets. I'm going to roll forward and then roll back. But in the AC200 do's and don'ts videos, it recommends pushing from the trunk of the vehicle so you get a nice even push. The only problem with that is it's hard to see the screen of the computer, which has indications of going front and back. I'm going to try and push evenly from the trunk opening, and Steve had recommended that he pushes or grabs here as well, just for the roll backwards, pull straight back. So I'm going to push from the trunk forward. It's telling me to stop. It read that. I'm going to pull straight backwards until it tells me to stop. And we're going to go back to center. So I can put my wheel chocks back in place, check the screen. It has not detected any wheel wobble. Next, I'm going to do a caster swing. This vehicle does have independent rear suspension. So I set the brake and I'm going to unpin the slip plates in the rear, the turn plates up front, remove my gap bars. Make sure my steering wheel is straight, which it is. So everything's in the green, but that doesn't mean that it's good. My thrust angle is off a little bit. Doesn't give me a spec, but my toe is off. But we'll look at these final numbers, and then I will re-roll it without adjusting anything. I'm going to put the 200 clamps on, and we'll see where we're at. On the front, do have a little bit more negative camber than it recommends, but still within the range of normal. It wants the toe to be right at 0. It says I'm off close to 0 here. I'm off to one side. Maybe I need to reposition the wheel a little bit because the vehicle does not have a pole. I was really expecting to see something out a little bit because of how darty it is on the road. But that's that. I kind of expect the other clamps to have very similar results because of how close to 0 we are. But right now we're verifying that the AC200 clamps have a good calibration file to follow. Since the 400 clamps were factory calibrated and the 200 clamps were not, now that I have the field calibration performed, we want to make sure that there's not more than a couple % discrepancy between the two clamps. So now I'm going to go back to home. I'm going to start from scratch doing the exact same procedure with the 200 clamp, and we are going to verify that we get the same results. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to roll the vehicle back, repin everything, put it back on here, and swap clamps. Okay, I have the 200 clamps mounted up. Going to go ahead and restart an alignment. All these slip plates are locked. The clamps are installed. The gap bars are installed. And this is where you really have to have the gap bars. I don't remember if I had this in here on my last video. I may not have, but when you're using the 200 clamps and the tire rolls through that gap, I guess it can drop the wheel level, so you may not get a true center. So the options are either have a gap bar in place or have a turn plate that fills the entire gap. I don't know if they make a larger slip plate or turn plate than what we have, so we have to use the gap bar. On this one, we're gonna roll backwards first. And this one requires a further distance to roll than the 400 clamps. Because it's doing the calibration all in one direction instead of rolling slightly forward and then slightly back. This one you just go further back in one direction, or you can go forward, whichever way you want to go. Okay, it says we are good. No wheel wobbles were detected. Depress brake, remove slip plate pins, and remove the gap bars. Steering wheel looks level. Bring you guys around so you can see the specs. Some minor discrepancies. Total toe is close to what we were before. The other numbers kind of all look the same. This one out here on the rear was in the green. I think our total toe was 0.25. So this could be a discrepancy of tire flex. Everything else looks pretty good. My thrust angle measured before was 0.05, I believe. Let's see if I can pull that up real quick. On the toe, on the left, we had 0.06. Over here we have 0.02. The right was negative 0.04. That number is the same, but that could be where I have the steering wheel positioned. What really matters is the total toe. That's going to tell us the discrepancy between the two clamps. the 400 clamp showed a positive 0.02. This one shows a negative 0.02, so very small difference in toe. But since we are close to zero, that discrepancy should be very small if the clamps are calibrated properly. The total toe on the rear, initially we showed 0.25 degrees using the 400 clamp. And with the 200 clamp, I have 0.32. So since the rear end is towed, not very much, but slightly, it is probably still causing a slight tire flex, and that's where we're seeing a difference in those numbers. So before, the left side showed 0.08, now I show 0.06. The right side was 0.17, and now I'm at 0.26. My thrust angle is slightly changed from one to the other as well. Now, we can't say that I was pushing on the right side tire causing deflection. I was pushing straight back from the rear bumper. The plates were locked in place. So I still think that the 200 clamp is a better way to go, because if I adjust this 0.32 toe in the rear and put that back to factory spec and then re-roll it, I believe I will have very repeatable numbers. If I do it with the 400 clamp, I think I will have a slight deviation in my second roll because the numbers were not at zero to begin with. So for a quick alignment check to verify that the vehicle is out of alignment, the 400 clamp's great. Slap it on the wheel, it'll tell you that you're out of alignment. I just don't know if I can 100% trust the readings that it's giving me without having to recomp the vehicle over and over again. So with that, since I had the Hofmann field rep come out, perform the single bar calibration on my machine, I feel that I can 100% trust the 200 clamps. Even though I'm still showing a deviation, I think that it's still the fault of the 400 clamps and the characteristics of the tire flex. This vehicle doesn't have a real tall sidewall, but it has a passenger tire which has less plies in the sidewall, so therefore they're more flexible, and they do that for comfort. So if this vehicle is out of alignment, that soft sidewall is going to allow that tire to bulge as you're rolling it if the toe is out. Toe is the primary one that's going to cause deflection. Camber would be the next in line. A lot of vehicles have camber in their alignment, so you're going to see that on most vehicles, but most vehicles are close to zero on toe. And if your wheels aren't perfectly straight ahead and your toe is not straight, they're towed in, that tire is going to roll under as you're pushing it. And the 400 clamp is going to be a little more susceptible to picking up that flex and giving you an inaccurate reading on the machine. So if your alignment is more than half a degree out, set it to zero, re-roll it, but you may have to go and re-roll it again just to confirm after the second re-roll. So I know this was a very long video, but I felt that I needed to follow up, give Hofmann credit. They came out, they performed the single bar calibration on my 200 clamps. They were concerned with my first video that not only that I was misusing the 400 clamps, but that my 200 clamps may not have been accurate. And I had never considered the 200 clamps to be inaccurate. I thought I was good to go. They showed concern in that. They finally got me in touch with the correct people I needed to get in touch with to get the field rep out and perform the single bar calibration on my machine. And I mean, that's pretty good customer support. I had called my field rep only. I had never called Hofmann corporate at this point. But once the initial concern with the clamp accuracy was brought up in a comment, I called my field rep, said, hey, can you come down? He said a target ID should be good enough. I left it at that until I was contacted by Snap-on, and they still recommended that a field rep come out. At that point, I had a little bit of trouble getting a hold of my field rep. He's a busy guy. We're a busy shop. So the higher ups got involved. They got me a date of which the guy could come down. He came down, performed the calibration. So I will probably continue to use the 200 clamps. The 400 clamps will probably sit most of the time unless I have a specific need for that style clamp. Hopefully in this video I covered any questions that had come up in my first two videos and a confirmation that the 200 clamps are accurate. The 400 clamps are accurate to an extent, but they do have downsides. Hopefully with this follow-up, I answered some of the questions that may have been brought up in the first two videos and have also laid out what steps were performed to improve our alignment process. If you guys have a Hofmann or Snap-on alignment machine and are using the 400 clamps and saw this video, then hopefully it helps you to improve your alignment process of knowing that you have to verify after making adjustments by re-rolling the vehicle. Because when it comes down to it, what really matters is customer service, making sure that that customer has a safe, reliable car to drive, and when it comes to the shop, making sure that you can perform tasks profitably. Alignment machines typically aren't considered profitable just for the alignment service by itself. They're profitable in the fact of getting people in to find out if their alignment's off, and then inspecting the vehicle to find out what components are causing the vehicle to be off. Upselling ball joints, control arm bushings, control arms, bent components, tie rod ends. And confirming that when you sell a set of tires and offer a warranty on those tires, that vehicle is not going to wear out the tires. So far, the machine's a good machine. You just got to know how to use it. We were misusing the 400 clamps and we were not aware of it at the time. We were using the 200 clamps for the last 2 years and we did not know that there could be a slight miscalibration issue with those clamps. So now that I've had those done, we should be good to go. This has been a long video. If you guys made it through the whole thing, congratulations. If you want to see more update videos, more videos on tools and equipment that I use on a daily basis, then go ahead and subscribe and click on that bell to be notified of future videos. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. If you want to see the AC200 do's and don'ts video, I will put a link down in the description. If at any point Hofmann contacts me and tells me that that video is not meant for public viewing, then I will remove that link and I will put a note in the description of why that link has been removed so you guys know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.